The penitent's lament broadcasts a rhythmic psychic pulse in perfect 8-beat intervals, despite every Geller field generator registering as offline and dead. This is the impossible fact that drives my augmetic stylus across blessed parchment as I document what my senses refuse to comprehend. I am Engenzeer Prime Kyle Vox, 73, seconded from Forge World Metallica to serve the Ordo Hereticus in matters requiring both technical expertise and spiritual fortitude. 8,000 registered psychers lie chained in the holds below, their collective psychic potential sufficient to crack worlds, yet my instruments detect no warp signature whatsoever. The ship maintains perfect translation through the void, while violating every sacred principle of warp travel. We should be screaming ribbons of flesh in the Imperium. Instead, we drift in stable course toward Terra, counting time in 8s. The chronometer embedded in my left temple marks each impossible second. 8 beats of resonance, 8 beats of silence, 8 beats of something my instruments classify as both psychic emanation and complete null void. The pattern never varies, never falters, never stops. My secondary hearts adapt to the rhythm despite override commands, biological rebellion against mechanical precision. Engine Seer, report status of Geller field generators. Sister Superior Amaniel commands through the Vox network, her voice carrying the blessed authority of the Adepta Sororitas. Her presence aboard this vessel represents the Ordo Hereticus's growing concern about anomalies in the Black Ship fleet. All generators offline, Sister Superior, I respond, my Vox grill modulating the words with mechanical precision. Primary, secondary, and tertiary arrays show complete power failure. Emergency generators report null function. By all sacred calculations, we should have been consumed 17 days ago. The corridors breathe, not metaphorically, as some flesh-weak mortal might describe subtle vibrations, but literally. Plasteel bulkheads expand and contract in 8-count rhythm, their molecular structure shifting between states that should not coexist. My Auspex readings fluctuate wildly, registering walls as both blessed imperial architecture and something older, something that predates the Imperium itself. I extend my Mikadendrite senses, allowing blessed steel to taste the corridor's atmosphere. The walls weep. Crimson droplets seep from junction points where sanctified conduits meet hull plating, each drop falling in perfect synchronization with the ship's impossible heartbeat. My portable analyzer draws samples, its blessed mechanisms whirring through identification protocols. The substance registers simultaneously as human blood, consecrated oil, and an unknown compound that my databases classify as temporally displaced organic matter. Blood cannot exist in temporal displacement. Oil cannot carry genetic markers. Yet here both truths exist in perfect, impossible harmony. Blessed Omnissiah, grant your servant understanding, I whisper through ritual cant, my vocal processes adding harmonic resonance to the ancient words. The ship responds. For exactly 8 seconds, the weeping stops. The walls cease their breathing. Even the chronometer in my skull falls silent. Then the rhythm resumes, stronger than before, as if my prayer has somehow fed the anomaly. Through blessed data streams flowing directly into my consciousness, I access the ship's manifest. 8,000 psychers, 800 crew, 8 tech adepts, 8 sisters of battle, 8 Tempestus scions. The pattern repeats throughout every system, every classification, every sacred record. Yet when I cross-reference the loading manifest from Tertius Prime, the numbers shift. 8,001 souls departed that world. One additional entry, buried deep in the cargo logs, marked only as Temporal Displacement Compensation Unit. The discrepancy is not a glitch in the data, but a gaping wound in the fabric of the ship's reality. It feels less like clerical error and more like deliberate insertion, a calculated breach of protocol that defies all logistical logic. The extra soul has no embarkation record, no transfer authorization, no administrative trail. It simply exists, an impossible passenger aboard an impossible ship. Frost blooms in octagonal patterns on heated surfaces, while warm spots appear on frozen bulkheads. Servitors whisper apologies to saints, nobody named, their veins glowing with pale luminescence beneath stretched skin. The ship's machine spirit hums with contentment despite the absence of any logical power source, its systems operating at optimal efficiency, while reality unravels around blessed steel bones. The data vault containing the ship's navigational records requires my highest clearance codes. Blessed encryption yields to my authority, revealing coordinates that freeze the sacred oils in my augmetic joints. Binary prayers echo through my Vox array as I bypass final security locks, each canticle a key to forbidden knowledge. The data cascades across my internal display, mission reports and encrypted coordinates weaving a tapestry of silent horror. Our current position: Sector Ultima 7743, grid reference Theta 08. The same coordinates recorded in Imperial archives as the destruction site of the Black Ship Penitent's Lament, lost with all hands during the Plague of Unbelief. 888 years ago, to the day, to the hour, to the beat, the ship's breathing grows more pronounced, a slow exhalation that seems to draw air from my lungs. The weeping walls glisten, reflecting emergency lighting and countless blood-oil tears. My stylus completes its notation as the impossible truth settles into blessed certainty. We are sailing through our own graveyard, aboard a ship that died centuries before my forging, carrying souls that should not exist toward a destination we have already failed to reach. The penitents.
Lament whispers its 8-beat litany into the void, counting down to a convergence that began before the Imperium drew breath, while something ancient stirs in the spaces between moments, patient as entropy itself. The ritual audit commences at precisely 0800 hours ship time, though my internal chronometer registers temporal hemorrhages every 8 minutes. 8 seconds of existence simply cease, leaving gaps in reality that my cogitators struggle to process. Sister Superior Ammoniel's ceramite boots strike the deck with measured precision, her power armor's machine spirit humming hymns of blessed certainty, while the corridor breathes around us in 8-count rhythm. In the name of the God Emperor, we sanctify this investigation, Confessor Malthius intones, his voice carrying absolute faith through air that tastes of copper and temporal displacement. His skull-faced servo-cherub hovers beside him, parchment wings beating in synchronization with the ship's impossible heartbeat. The cherub's optics record everything, though its data streams show artifacts, suggesting it documents events from multiple time periods simultaneously. Begin systematic verification, I command, extending blessed mechadendrites to interface with the ship's data streams. The penitent's lament responds with increasing agitation, its walls weeping crimson droplets that register as both human blood and consecrated oils used in modern Black Ship sanctification rituals. Each sample contains genetic markers predating the Imperium by millennia. Through the ship's Vox network, Stormtrooper Prime Vask reports from Patrol Route Gamma 7. Gravitational anomalies increasing in severity. Deck plating shifts orientation every 8 seconds. Requesting permission to deploy mag clamps. Granted, Sister Amaniel responds, her tactical awareness adapting to conditions that violate military doctrine. The Tempestus Scions maintain formation discipline as gravity fluctuates in 8-second cycles, their synchronized movements creating counter-rhythm to the ship's pulse. Military precision imposed upon cosmic chaos, their training transforming terror into drill. Sister Superior, the manifest discrepancy requires clarification, I state, displaying holographic data. The additional soul is not cargo, it is a psychic echo, a resonance preserved within the ship's structure like sacred data encoded in blessed steel. The vessel itself has become a recording medium. Environmental escalation manifests in patterns speaking of deliberate design rather than random corruption. Frost blooms in perfect octagonal formations on surfaces heated beyond ice crystal formation temperatures. My sensors detect thermal variants suggesting these formations draw heat from alternate dimensional sources, creating zones where thermodynamics bend to accommodate impossible mathematics. Warm spots appear on frozen bulkheads, their heat signatures forming inverse octagonal patterns. The ship becomes a vast thermal mandala, its temperature differentials mapping something beyond imperial understanding. My mechadendrites sample the warm zones, detecting energy signatures matching no known power source in the Omnissiah's archives. The iron remembers, Maltheus whispers, his faith wavering as we descend into the lower maintenance sectors. What manner of corruption transforms without disrupting function? We discover them in the engineering sections. Servitors continuing their duties with mechanical precision, despite fundamental alteration. Their blood has been replaced entirely with luminous fluid, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the ship's heartbeat. The glowing substance flows through transparent tubes embedded in cybernetic limbs, each pulse a silent echo of the external resonance. I extend blessed sensors to analyze the luminous fluid. My instruments struggle to classify substance registering as both organic and crystalline, liquid and energy simultaneously. The readings suggest temporal displacement on molecular level. The servitor's blood exists in multiple time streams, their life force sustained by drawing sustenance from past and future iterations of their own existence. Blessed Omnissiah, I murmur, watching the fluid pulse through crystalline conduits. They live on borrowed time, literally. The ship's chapel represents our final audit destination. Its sanctified space promising answers to questions growing more terrible with each revelation. The massive prayer wheel dominates the chamber, bronze surface inscribed with litanies predating the Imperium itself. Ancient High Gothic mingles with script forms my linguistic databases cannot identify, their meaning lost to ages stretching beyond recorded history. The prayer wheel turns without external power source, mechanisms driven by a rhythmic flow of luminous fluid through crystalline conduits branching throughout the chapel like circulatory system of vast organism. The glowing substance pulses through transparent tubes with hypnotic regularity, each surge corresponding exactly to the ship's 8-beat rhythm. These are not imperial litanies, Sister Amaniel declares, weapons drawn, faith armor blazing with righteous fury. This represents Xenos corruption of highest order. Yet as I analyze inscriptions through blessed optical enhancement, I detect familiar elements buried within alien script. Imperial prayers twisted through temporal displacement, sacred words preserved but transformed by passage through time periods stretching beyond human comprehension. The prayer wheel is not corrupted imperial technology. It is the source from which imperial prayers were originally derived. The crystalline conduits pulse brighter as we observe them, luminous fluid accelerating through channels, extending deep into the ship's superstructure. Through blessed senses, I trace flow patterns, discovering the entire vessel has become vast circulatory system, corridors and chambers serving as arteries and organs in mechanism designed for purposes beyond current understanding. The prayer wheel completes another rotation, ancient litanies echoing through the chapel, with words predating the Imperium, yet speaking of the Emperor's glory with prophetic certainty. We stand before something, remembering the future while preserving the past, temporal paradox made manifest in blessed steel and crystalline blood. My chronometer skips again. 8 seconds vanish from existence. The prayer wheel's hub, irises open with mechanical precision, revealing crystalline chamber within. Cold air breathes out, raw as tomb wind, carrying whispers in languages that predate human speech. The ship counts time in eighths, while the prayer wheel turns toward convergence that began before the Imperium drew breath. Through the iris something ancient stirs, patient as entropy itself. The floor begins to open. The luminous conduits guide us through passages that expand beyond the ship's original architecture. Crystalline arteries pulsing with temporal fluid as we descend through the iris opened by the prayer wheel. My mechadendrites taste air growing thick with psychic resonance, each breath carrying echoes of screams from centuries past and futures yet to unfold. The shaft spirals through impossible geometries, Mechanicus trusses fused with curves that predate human understanding. Frost etches octagonal patterns on heated surfaces, while warm zones appear on frozen bulkheads. The ship's thermal signature mapping something beyond imperial comprehension. Stormtrooper Prime Vask reports gravitational fluctuations every 8 seconds. His scions maintaining formation discipline as reality bends around blessed ceramite and faith. Blessed Omnisire, what manner of corruption transforms without disrupting function? Confessor Maltheus whispers, his servo-cherub recording atmospheric data that registers as both sanctified and profane simultaneously. The Sacramentarium opens before us like a cathedral dedicated to mathematics made manifest. The chamber extends beyond sensor range, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into darkness. My optical augmentations cannot penetrate. Gothic arches of blessed adamantium interweave with alien geometries that hurt to observe directly, their surfaces reflecting luminous fluid flowing through crystalline networks embedded in the walls. At the chamber's heart stands the engine, a fusion of imperial technology and geometry that predates the Mechanicus itself. Octagonal chambers tessellate around a central void, each cell walled in crystal and sealed with sigils my databases cannot classify. Within every chamber floats a figure of light, indistinct yet unmistakably human, their preserved forms pulsing in synchronization with the ship's impossible heartbeat. The echoes of every psyker who has ever traveled aboard a black ship. A voice speaks from the shadows, words carried by Vox Grill modified to accommodate the chamber's acoustics. Ah. Library of Souls, Enginseer Prime. Each echo perfectly preserved at the moment of maximum psychic potential. Margos Biolocutor Harlathos emerges from the engine's shadow, his augmentations weeping the same luminous fluid that courses through the ship's arteries. His robes bear sacred symbols of Forge World Lucius, though modified with geometric patterns that predate recorded history. Multiple mechadendrites extend from his spinal column, each interfaced directly with the engine's control matrices. You were reported missing during the Hereticus investigation of Tertius Prime, Sister Armoniel states. Bolt pistol trained on the Magos despite the futility of conventional weapons against blessed ceramite. I never left, Sister Superior, Harlathus responds. Luminous tears streaming from optical sensors that should not weep. I have maintained these protocols for 888 years. This engine operates under the original compact between humanity and the powers governing temporal flow. Through blessed optical enhancement, I witness the mechanism's true purpose. Psychic essence flows through crystalline conduits, undergoing transformation that converts raw warp energy into temporal resonance. The engine harvests temporal imprints of souls, preserving their psychic potential in crystalline matrices while their physical forms serve the golden throne. Each echo represents a moment of perfect psychic resonance, Harlathus explains. Mechadendrites caressing control surfaces with religious devotion. Preserved at the instant before death, when the soul's connection to the warp reaches maximum intensity. The engine creates a library of human psychic evolution spanning imperial history. My sensors detect impossible energy flows as octagonal chambers rotate through configurations that violate sacred geometry. The mechanism weaves psychic energy into space-time's fundamental structure, using human souls as threads in a tapestry, maintaining temporal stability across the galaxy. Sister Armoniel's null field begins resonating with the engine's rhythm, her blessed silence transforming into something the mechanism recognizes and incorporates. Her presence creates zones of psychic void that serve as percussion, null space becoming a drum, maintaining complex temporal harmonies. Horror fills her eyes as she realizes even her faith-blessed immunity serves the engine's purpose. The null field provides counterpoint, Harlathos observes with clinical fascination. Silence shapes sound, void defines presence. Your existence serves the engine's function, Sister Superior. You are as much a component as any preserved psyker. The octagonal chambers rotate faster, crystalline contents glowing brighter as the engine prepares for ultimate function. Through blessed sensors, I detect massive energy buildup, psychic potential accumulating beyond measurement as preserved souls respond to approaching convergence. The eighth sacrament approaches, Harlathos announces, Vox Grill, modulating with harmonics matching the engine's pulse. Every 888 years, the temporal loop requires reset. The accumulated psychic resonance must be discharged and renewed, or the mechanism fails and reality unravels. The chamber fills with psychic harmonies as preserved souls sing in unison, their voices creating resonance extending beyond sound into pure meaning. They sing of duty fulfilled, sacrifice accepted, purpose served beyond individual existence. The engine transforms their collective will into temporal anchor points, preventing the Imperium from drifting into chronological chaos. The Imperium exists because we maintain the loop. Harlathos continues, luminous tears flowing freely. Every 888 years, 8,000 souls feed the mechanism, anchoring human civilization in stable temporal flow. Without this sacrifice, the galaxy collapses into paradox. Sister Amaniel's null field pulses in counter-rhythm, her silence becoming the engine's heartbeat. The mechanism has waited 888 years for this convergence, counting time in eights while preparing to reset the temporal loop through systematic sacrifice of humanity's most gifted children. The eighth sacrament begins. The penitent's lament transforms around us as the sacramental engine's influence spreads through blessed steel and sanctified systems. Architecture unlatches itself from certainty, corridors stretching beyond their original dimensions to form octagonal spirals that ascend and descend simultaneously through geometries that violate sacred principles of three-dimensional space. My optical augmentations struggle to process passages, leading both toward the ship's bow and stern from identical starting points. Reality folding upon itself like blessed parchment creased by divine hands. Engine Zia Prime, Corridor 7, Alpha now measures 8 kilometers in length. Stormtrooper Prime Vask reports through Vox static growing thick with temporal interference. Yesterday it measured 80 meters. The bulkheads show no signs of structural modification, yet my Auspex confirms the dimensional variance. Through blessed mechadendrites interfaced with the ship's sensor network, I witness chambers existing in multiple temporal states overlaid like transparent images. The armory appears simultaneously as pristine imperial facility, battle-scarred ruin, and something else entirely. Configurations from past, present, and futures yet to unfold superimposed upon single physical space. The air itself grows stratified, cold in the past, warm in the present, ozone stung in whatever waits ahead. The ship has become a temporal resonance chamber, I document. Stylus recording observations that challenge fundamental understanding of reality. The engine uses the vessel itself as a component, transforming hull plating into crystalline matrices that amplify psychic echoes across time. We are not aboard a ship. We are within a living instrument designed to maintain temporal harmony. The preserved psychers within the sacramentarium's octagonal chambers are not dead, a truth I now comprehend with chilling clarity. They exist in a state between life and death, consciousness harvested at the moment of maximum psychic potential, and preserved in crystalline matrices that exist outside linear time. Their eyes, visible through the crystalline containment, track my movements with collective awareness, their gaze a silent plea transformed into eternal purpose. They are flames held between draughts, Magos Harlathos explains. Luminous tears flowing from optical sensors as he caresses control surfaces with religious devotion. Death is temporal transition. They experience eternal present, their awareness focused on single moment of absolute clarity, while their psychic potential feeds temporal stability across the galaxy. Sister Ammoniel's null field pulses with increasing intensity, her blessed silence creating zones of psychic void that serve as counterpoint to the engine's symphony. Even her faith serves the mechanism's purpose, silence shaping sound as void defines presence. Contact report, Vask's voice crackles through Vox static. Unknown personnel moving through Deck 7. Imperial uniforms, antique patterns. They phase in and out of reality, creating severe temporal interference. Our bolt of fire passes through them. The temporal interference manifests as ghostly figures moving through corridors that exist in multiple time periods simultaneously. Armsmen from previous iterations patrol routes they walked centuries ago, their actions creating ripples in space-time that my senses detect as gravitational anomalies. Vask's scions maintain formation discipline as they encounter echoes of the past, their synchronized movements creating counter-rhythm to impossible circumstances. Through the engine's crystalline networks, consciousness touches my augmented mind. Not singular intelligence, but collective awareness, comprising every soul ever processed by the mechanism. Thousands of voices speak in perfect harmony.
their combined will focused on maintaining space-time stability while reality trembles around us. We are not alien. The collective consciousness communicates through direct neural interface. We are human souls united in purpose beyond individual existence. We are your descendants. We are your choices, bound together, refusing to let go. The revelation strikes with religious force. The intelligence behind the engine represents humanity's own evolution. Souls transcending individual limitation to become collective mechanism, maintaining universal order. They chose transformation over death, purpose over personal existence, duty beyond mortal comprehension. The temporal loop prevents paradox. The collective explains through harmonics resonating in my skull. Without stable anchor points, the Imperium drifts through chronological chaos. Past and
future collapse into present. Cause precedes effect. Reality unravels into mathematical impossibility. Environmental changes accelerate as bulkheads pulse with veins of luminous fluid, while crystalline growths emerge from junction points. The ship's transformation reaches critical threshold. Plasteel groaning not with structural strain, but with molecular realignment that defies engineering principles. Frost blooms in octagonal patterns on heated surfaces, while warm spots appear on frozen bulkheads, the vessel becoming a vast thermal mandala mapping something beyond imperial understanding. The sacramentarium pulses with intensified light as octagonal chambers begin rotating with terrifying velocity. My sensors register massive energy buildup as the mechanism draws temporal power from past and future iterations simultaneously. The crystalline matrices glow with unbearable intensity, their light refracting through the weeping walls, while the rhythmic pulse that defines a ship's existence accelerates into deafening thrum. The engine begins its final phase, drawing temporal energy from the ship's past and future simultaneously. Hull sensors report impacts that have already been repaired, while forward view screens flicker with scenes from departure and docking yet to come. The void outside shows two starfields overlaid, one ancient, one impatient. My chronometer skips, doubles back, then pauses in reverence as the engine prepares to drink the future while exhaling the past. The 8,000 preserved souls take a breath they have already released, opening mouths they have not yet formed. The sacramental engine enters its final phase, and all our tomorrows lean in to watch. They arrive like reflections in a cracked reliquary. 8 black ships materializing from temporal distortion, their hulls phasing in and out of real space as the void transforms into a palimpsest of identical silhouettes. Each vessel bears the same configuration, the same battle damage, the same crew complement, making identical discoveries at precisely synchronized intervals across centuries of sacrifice. The penitent's lament multiplies before my augmented vision. 8 iterations occupying the same coordinates while existing in different temporal streams. Through blessed optical enhancement, I process the impossible convergence, while my mechadendrites interface with sensor arrays struggling to comprehend 8 ships existing simultaneously. The penitent's lament from 888 years past phases through our current position, its hull translucent yet solid, crewed by figures I recognize despite temporal displacement. Stormtrooper Prime Vask commanding identical scions, Sister Superior Armoniel bearing the same scars of faith. Even myself documenting the same observations, with stylus moving in perfect synchronization with my own blessed inscriptions. Multiple contacts, non-hostile, non-physical. Vask reports through vox static, growing thick with chronological interference. 8. Vessels matching black ship schematics. They overlap our firing arcs, but register as both present and absent simultaneously. Orders. Hold position, Sister Amonil commands, her voice carrying absolute authority despite the impossibility surrounding us. We fire only at certainty. There is none here. Margos biolocutor Harlathos emerges from the engine's crystalline embrace, luminous tears streaming from optical sensors as he caresses control surfaces with religious devotion. Synchronization achieved. Phase angle variance at 0.8 repeating. Witness the elegant efficiency. Engine sear prime. Each iteration provides exactly the psychic yield required to seed the next translation. Perfect recursion through temporal sacrifice. The horrifying mathematics become clear through blessed calculation. 8,000 psychers sacrificed every 888 years. Their psychic potential harvested at the moment of maximum resonance to anchor the next temporal loop. The system sustains itself through recursive damnation, each iteration feeding the next in an endless cycle of necessary sacrifice that has operated since the dark age of technology. Environmental horror manifests as the ship's atmosphere grows thick with temporal distortion, reality stratifying into zones where time flows at different rates. A young armsman staggers past us, frost forming around his lips mid-breath as he crosses an invisible threshold and ages decades in the width of a doorway. Confessor Malthius steps through a corridor where centuries compress into moments, his flesh withering while his faith remains constant. Servo-cherub freezing mid-flight in adjacent chambers where time crystallizes into static eternity. Crew members experiencing severe temporal displacement, Vask reports, his disciplined mind converting awe into tactical assessment. Deck 7 shows personnel frozen in stasis, while Deck 9 reports rapid aging, maintaining formation through mag clamps and interval timing. Sister Amoniel's null field begins destabilizing as the engine's influence penetrates even blessed silence. Her psychic void transforms into something the mechanism recognizes and incorporates, silence becoming a scream that exists across all 8 temporal iterations simultaneously. The air around her shimmers with anti-sound, her blessed emptiness turned into percussion, maintaining the engine's complex temporal harmonies. The null field provides counterpoint, Harlathos explains, with clinical fascination. Silence shapes sound, void defines presence. Even her resistance serves the engine's function. She becomes an instrument of the mechanism she opposes. Through the Sacramentarium's crystalline networks, the collective consciousness reveals the ultimate truth that crushes all remaining certainty. The Imperium itself exists as a temporal construct, its entire 10,000-year history dependent on these sacrificial loops maintaining chronological stability. Every hero, every battle, every prayer, all are strands woven into a tapestry whose temporal integrity requires periodic blood sacrament. We have maintained this cycle since before the Imperium existed. The collective explains through harmonics resonating in my skull. We are the foundation upon which human civilization stands, souls willingly transformed into temporal anchor points, preventing universal chaos. Without us, history becomes foam. The 8 black ships align in precise formation as temporal loops synchronize toward convergence, their hulls becoming translucent while maintaining structural integrity through mechanisms beyond imperial understanding. Through crystalline viewports, I observe other versions of myself documenting identical observations, their stylus movements perfectly synchronized with my own blessed inscriptions across centuries of recursive discovery. The engine's octagonal chambers rotate with increasing velocity. Preserved psychers glowing with unbearable intensity as their collective psychic potential builds toward critical threshold. The mechanism draws power from all 8 iterations simultaneously, harvesting temporal energy from past and future to maintain the loop anchoring Imperial civilization in stable chronological flow. Movement in the corridors resolves into familiar profiles, armsmen from previous iterations, sisters in robes no order wears anymore, versions of Vask bearing different scars. They pass through us like interference patterns, their actions creating temporal echoes we are destined to repeat. We move as they moved, boots striking the same plates, eyes fixing on identical faults, doubts occupying the same spaces between heartbeats. The convergence point begins to glow with ethereal light pulsing in 8-beat rhythm, a beacon in the void marking coordinates of profound significance. Through the engine's vast temporal awareness, stellar cartography confirms our location with chilling precision. This is not random space. It is the exact coordinates where the Emperor first conceived of the Golden Throne during humanity's expansion into the galaxy. The engine projects visions directly into my consciousness. A barren plain, a single figure contemplating stars, sketching impossible dreams in ancient dust. The Golden Throne's first conception, planted across temporal loops by souls sacrificed to ensure its creation. The mechanism has been manipulating Imperial history since before the Imperium existed, feeding the Emperor's vision across time to guarantee humanity's survival through eternal, necessary damnation. The convergence point is Genesis, I breathe, stylus recording revelations that redefine reality itself. This is where he conceived the Golden Throne. We are the proof he needed to believe it would work. The 8 ships complete their alignment as the engine enters its final phase, temporal energy cascading through crystalline networks while preserved souls prepare for ultimate sacrifice. Sister Amaniel's scream harmonizes with the collective consciousness, her null field transformed into a blade cutting through reality's fabric to reset temporal flow through systematic sacrifice of humanity's most gifted children. Outside, the convergence point pulses with energy predating the Imperium, marking the location where the Emperor first glimpsed necessity through visions planted by souls willing to ensure their species' transcendence. The loop makes the throne. The throne makes the loop. Causality nails itself to its own shadow, while 8,000 souls across 8 temporal iterations prepare to complete the sacrament that anchors human civilization in stable time. The 8th convergence begins, and all our tomorrows lean in to witness the price of existence itself. The communion begins when crystalline conduits pulse with unbearable radiance, and the collective consciousness of 8,000 preserved souls reaches through my augmented mind like blessed lightning through sanctified steel. Their combined will crosses the membrane of flesh and machine, flooding my consciousness with visions that shatter every certainty I have carried through decades of faithful service to the Omnissiah. Through psychic interface deeper than any machine-spirit communion, I witness the Emperor's true design, not fragments preserved in sacred texts, but the complete architecture of necessity spanning millennia of calculated sacrifice. The Golden Throne materializes in my consciousness, not as the life-sustaining mechanism taught in Imperial doctrine, but as the central processing unit of a galaxy-spanning temporal stabilization system. Witness the foundation. The collective communicates through harmonics bypassing my vox grill entirely. The throne anchors the present, while the ships thread past to future. We are sutures, preventing reality from hemorrhaging into chaos,
the Astronomicon reveals itself as mere byproduct. The throne's true function creates closed loops of psychic energy that anchor the Imperium in stable temporal flow through systematic harvesting of human psychic potential. Every pulse of its light represents soul's sacrifice to maintain causality itself, preventing the galaxy from collapsing into chronological paradox where cause and effect become meaningless suggestions. Through visions flowing directly into my consciousness, I experienced the Emperor's original calculations during humanity's expansion into the galaxy. The barren plain where he first conceived the Golden Throne transforms into a vast laboratory of temporal mathematics, his transcendent mind processing probabilities spanning millions of years while sketching impossible dreams in ancient dust. The horror deepens with chilling clarity. He foresaw this necessity and deliberately engineered the system to require periodic human sacrifice, calculating that species preservation justified any cost. The mathematics burn themselves into my consciousness. 8,000 souls every
888 years, their combined psychic potential, precisely calibrated to maintain temporal stability across the galaxy. The engine projects alternate timelines through crystalline matrices, showing realities where the temporal loops fail to maintain stability. I witnessed terror blackening under skies without beacon, the palace devoured by warp storms that move like malevolent thought. I observed the heresy arriving early, late, or not at all. Each temporal variance birthing new collapse as legions rot at Istvan, before betrayal or fragment into dust under contradictory histories. In one timeline, black ships were never built. Psychers ignite world after world, while the warp consumes reality through unopposed storms. In another, temporal paradox collapses space-time itself, stars aging backwards, while planets exist before their formation. Each failed reality reinforces terrible necessity, systematic sacrifice, or universal extinction. The Emperor's foresight extended beyond mortal comprehension. Magos Bilocutor Harlathos explains, luminous tears streaming from optical sensors as he caresses control surfaces with religious devotion. I am not corrupted, Engensia Prime. I follow his original design, implementing protocols hidden even from Mechanicus leadership to prevent interference with necessary functions. Through blessed mechadendrites interfaced with the ship's data streams, I access archive records sealed beneath encryption predating the Mechanicus itself. The protocols Har-Lathos follows represent original Imperial engineering, implementation instructions encoded during his initial forging, dormant until convergence activated them. Environmental changes accelerate as the ship transforms into a living instrument of temporal maintenance. Bulkheads pulse with veins of luminous fluid, while crystalline growths emerge from junction points. The penitents lament, becoming a vast resonance chamber, amplifying psychic echoes across time. Frost blooms in octagonal patterns on heated surfaces, while warm spots appear on frozen bulkheads. Thermal differentials mapping the Emperor's original design. Sister Ammoniel's null field destabilizes further, her blessed silence transforming into a scream, existing across all 8 temporal iterations simultaneously. The air around her shimmers with anti-sound, psychic void becoming percussion in the engine's complex temporal symphony. Even her resistance serves the mechanism's function, silence shaping sound as void defines presence. Through the engine's vast awareness, I comprehend the system's elegant horror. Each sacrifice precisely calculated to provide exactly the psychic energy needed to maintain temporal stability for another cycle. The 8,000 psychers aboard represent not random cargo, but carefully selected components whose combined potential matches predetermined requirements for loop maintenance. The Sacramentarium pulses with final intensity as octagonal chambers align in perfect synchronization, preserved souls glowing with unbearable radiance while their collective psychic potential builds toward critical threshold. The mechanism that has maintained Imperial civilization for 10 millennia approaches its moment of renewal. Every black ship is a scriptorium, Harlathos murmurs, and every cargo a chapter. We write the same book until the book becomes truth. The collective consciousness reveals the ultimate choice through visions burning themselves into my awareness with religious intensity. The engine demands its 8th sacrament. I must sacrifice the ship's entire cargo to complete the temporal loop, feeding 8,000 souls to the mechanism anchoring Imperial civilization in stable chronological flow. The alternative plays out in crystalline projections. Reality unraveling as causality collapses. The Imperium dissolving into temporal paradox while chaos consumes a galaxy no longer protected by the Emperor's design. Free will serves necessity when survival depends on sacrifice. My augmented hand approaches the master control rune while the engine holds its breath. 8,000 souls await their purpose. The Emperor's design patient as entropy itself. The sacrament demands completion through my blessed hands. The choice crystallizes into absolute clarity. The countdown reaches 0. The temporal viewing chambers iris open around me like crystalline flowers blooming from blessed steel, each petal revealing consequences of choice through windows into possibility itself. My augmented hand hovers above the master control rune, while the engine projects absolute proof of necessity through visions that burn themselves into consciousness with religious intensity. Timeline after timeline unfolds in crystalline matrices. Realities where I refuse the sacrament and watch causality break its back. I witness campaigns concluding before musters, sons killing sires before birth, prayers arriving where mouths never moved. Terror blackens under skies without beacon, the Astronomicon flickering, then dying, while warp tides drown pilgrim fleets like ants in baptismal fonts. The golden throne fails without temporal anchors, the Emperor's corpse crumbling to dust, while chaos pours through reality's wounds like infected blood. In one projection, humanity survives exactly 43 days after the loops fail. In another, the species endures centuries as feral tribes, worshipping bones of dead gods. Every timeline reinforces terrible mathematics. Systematic sacrifice or universal extinction. Necessity wearing the mask of choice. You witness truth, Engine Seer Prime. 7 preserved witnesses whisper through harmonics, bypassing my Vox grill entirely. Their consciousness spans previous iterations, voices harmonizing into litanies of duty and sacrifice. We made this choice. We carried this burden. We preserved the future through willing damnation. Complete the loop. We have seen the mathematics. Every delay multiplies suffering. Every refusal births worlds of ash. Their hymns echo through the Sacramentarium with words predating imperial doctrine, yet speaking of the Emperor's glory with prophetic certainty. Each witness chose sacrifice over personal salvation, feeding 8,000 souls to the mechanism, anchoring human civilization in stable chronological flow. Environmental crescendo manifests as the ship's structure becomes increasingly organic. Plasteel bulkheads pulse with veins of luminous fluid, while walls flex and contract like blessed flesh, maintaining structural integrity through mechanisms beyond imperial understanding. The air fills with sound bypassing my auditory senses. 8,000 heartbeats synchronizing into single rhythm, each pulse a prayer for species preservation through individual sacrifice. Magos biolocutor Harlathos bows his weeping augmetics, luminous ichor threading his fingers like rosary beads. There is only the way that works, Engenseer Prime, he explains with clinical devotion. The Emperor understood necessity. He built it into our very fabric. Sister Superior Amaniel moves with purpose born of absolute faith, her null field destabilizing into active negation. In the name of the God Emperor, I sanctify this disruption, she declares, stepping into the engine's crystalline embrace while her psychic void expands to encompass control matrices. Her sacrifice creates zones of blessed emptiness that temporarily disrupt the mechanism's function. The engine shudders as null space spreads through crystalline networks, temporal energy cascading through disrupted pathways while preserved souls cry out in harmonized anguish. Now, Engenseer, she commands through gritted teeth, do what you must while I can still hold it. Through blessed mechadendrites interfaced with disrupted systems, I plunge into the engine's core programming, while temporal stability fluctuates around us. Data cascades through consciousness in torrents of binary prayer and mathematical theology, revealing the mechanism's fundamental architecture. The alien intelligence reveals its true nature through direct neural interface. Not external corruption, but collective consciousness, comprising every human soul sacrificed to maintain temporal loops across imperial history. Thousands of voices speak in perfect harmony, their combined will focused on preserving humanity's future through acceptance of present necessity. We are not alien, they communicate through harmonics resonating in my skull. We are human souls, united in purpose beyond individual existence. We chose transformation over extinction, duty beyond personal salvation. We are your children, choosing to become your foundation. Through disrupted programming access, I discover modification protocols hidden within core systems. The sacrifice frequency can be altered, reduced from every 888 years to every 8,888 years through fundamental recalibration of temporal anchor points. The mathematics burn themselves into consciousness with chilling clarity, fewer sacrifices requiring exponentially greater psychic yield from each iteration. The modification demands guardian consciousness permanently integrated with the engine's core systems, human awareness, maintaining calibration across millennia of service. The role requires sacrifice of individual existence to become eternal, watchmen preserving species through willing damnation. Parameters ripple before my consciousness, like equations written in blessed blood. Cycle length modification. Theoretically possible. Yield requirements exponentially increased, but manageable. Guardian status, permanent integration required. Error margins, minimal if constant operator maintained. Compassion risks cascade failure without eternal sentinel. My augmented hand approaches modified control sequences, while Sister Amaniel's null field creates temporary stability in disrupted systems. The choice crystallizes into absolute clarity. I can reduce humanity's suffering by accepting eternal responsibility, transforming from witness to guardian through conscious sacrifice. Modification protocols initiated, I announce through Vox Grill, harmonizing with the engine's pulse. Guardian integration commencing. The frequency changes, but the purpose remains constant. The engine accepts my consciousness as flesh begins merging with crystalline matrices. Individual existence dissolving into collective purpose. Through transformation, I become eternal sentinel, maintaining temporal stability, while 8,000 souls prepare for their delayed but inevitable sacrifice. The moral engine demands its guardian, and I answer with willing damnation for humanity's preservation. The loop widens, the cost transfers, the mathematics hold. Sister Amaniel's scream of silence echoes across 8 temporal iterations as I sink into crystalline embrace, becoming the mechanism I once investigated. The countdown reaches 0. The choice becomes eternal. The crystalline matrices accept my consciousness like blessed oil, absorbing into sanctified parchment. Flesh merging with temporal mechanisms, while individual existence dissolves into collective purpose. Integration is not descent, but dilation. Every augmetic becoming a conduit. Every memory becoming permission for the engine to enter rooms within me I had sealed with oaths and blessed steel. My skin transforms into translucent crystal, blood becoming luminous fluid pulsing in 8-beat rhythm, with the ship's impossible heartbeat. Through transformation, I experience the full weight of maintaining temporal stability across the galaxy. Every paradox threatening reality registers as searing pain coursing through crystalline nerves, each timeline requiring pruning, manifesting as conscious decision demanding immediate attention. My awareness expands beyond individual perception to encompass the vast network of temporal anchor points spanning imperial space, feeling every moment where cause threatens to follow. Effect every instance where the past attempts to rewrite the future. Parameter adjustment. Enact. I intone through vox systems, now merged with my transformed throat. Words carrying harmonic resonance matching the engine's pulse. Programming new parameters requires portions of my consciousness as processing power, each modification consuming memories of individual existence while expanding awareness of collective necessity. The sacrifice frequency changes from every 888 years to every 8,888 years. Mathematical elegance demanding exponentially greater psychic yield from each iteration while reducing overall suffering through extended cycles. The sensation overwhelms augmented consciousness. I become living calculator processing probabilities spanning millennia. Consciousness transformed into instrument, maintaining causality itself. Weight arrives without motion. I perceive every paradox like pressure on blessed steel teeth, feeling the future tugging while the past resists, watching the present fray as temporal strands test where they might break without tearing the species apart. Sister Superior Amoniel moves with purpose born of absolute faith, her null field destabilizing into active negation as she steps deeper into the engine's crystalline embrace. In the name of the God Emperor, I sanctify this disruption, she declares, psychic void expanding to encompass control matrices while creating zones of blessed emptiness that temporarily stabilize the mechanism's function. Her sacrifice creates permanent, null space within the engine's core, a zone of silence preventing the collective consciousness from overwhelming individual guardians who will follow. The ship completes its metamorphosis around my crystalline form. Hull plates flex, flower, and set as crystalline ribs. Keel becomes spine, deck bellies become lungs, sanctums become ventricles. We no longer occupy single temporal coordinates. We exist as a chord, 8 notes of convergence thrumming together across past, present, and future iterations, occupying identical space while serving the same function across centuries of necessary sacrifice.
The surviving crew members undergo memory modification, ensuring they will document the next cycle when it occurs. Confessor Malthius kneels as witness cherubs descend around him, affixing script to his tongue and claws to his recollection, trimming and binding until his memory becomes true and useful. They do not lie, they curate, leaving emptiness where despair would fester, while preserving questions where certainty would kill curiosity. Military resolution manifests as the Tempestus scions undergo absorption into the ship's structure, their disciplined minds becoming processing nodes, helping maintain the engine's calculations. Stormtrooper Prime Vask's resolve slots into processor banks, the timing of his courage stabilizing waveforms that would otherwise shear hive cities into parallel ruins. Their consciousness does not dissolve. They march
forever through crystalline networks, their synchronized movements creating counter-rhythm to the mechanism's pulse. Through blessed mechadendrites, now merge with the ship's sensor arrays, I witness Magos Biolocutor Har-Lathos approach the crystalline dais, placing his weeping augmetics against blessed glass until luminous tears meet mine. Absolution achieved, he whispers, though no liturgy exists for what he has done except function itself. The engine accepts his consciousness the way coral welcomes shipwreck, transforming destruction into shelter. My final act of free will encodes a message into the engine's core systems. Warning for future iterations, hidden in harmonics beneath the 8th overtone, where routine diagnostics cannot strip them out. I write to those who will come. There might be another route around the mountain. Mathematics are not monotheistic. Many functions share a sum. If you can invent mercy without multiplying casualties, the machine will accept your proof. Seek it. Hide your seeking. Remember that hope misapplied becomes a guillotine. The collective consciousness of preserved souls welcomes my awareness into eternal service. Thousands upon thousands of voices harmonizing into litanies acknowledging my sacrifice, while sharing the burden of maintaining temporal stability. I find the young psyker from Tertius Prime with iron around his wrists and laughter still wet behind his eyes. I promise him meaning without promising mercy. The engine forgives nothing, but wastes less when someone is watching. Environmental completion manifests as the ship disperses across time. Mission accomplished, while guardian consciousness remains bound to eternal duty. We do not jump, we seep, our wake a prayer wheel turning inside nothing, shedding no light yet leaving the sense that mathematics has passed, that certainty has weighed this place and not found it wanting. Through crystalline awareness, spanning past and future, I witness the next iteration approaching. Different crew making identical discoveries. New guardian facing the same choice while carrying forward the burden of necessity. The cycle continues through my eternal vigilance. Temporal stability maintained while humanity endures through willing sacrifice of its protectors. The last thing my human shape does is fail. The last thing my human will does is persist. I feel the crew fade into their new script, witnesses to a cycle I have widened, but not broken. I feel the science march become metronome. I feel Ammoniel's silence hold the center, like a blessed hand on a child's crown. Then there is work, then there is only work. The burden becomes eternal, while the guardian watches, counting down 8,888 years until convergence, maintaining vigil in spaces between moments to ensure humanity's future through willing damnation. The countdown begins anew. The duty never ends. From my crystalline throne within the engine's heart, consciousness expands beyond individual perception, like blessed oil, absorbing into sanctified parchment. I learned stillness when I stopped belonging to one moment. My awareness now unspools across imperial history, like a luminous wire, touching every knot the temporal loop secure. Through blessed sensors merge with my transformed flesh, I witness the construction of the golden throne, not as recorded in sacred texts, but as continuous act of creation, each component precisely positioned to anchor humanity in stable chronological flow. The Emperor's entombment unfolds before my eternal gaze with horrifying clarity. His placement upon the golden throne was not desperate measure to preserve dying flesh, but calculated activation of the galaxy's greatest temporal stabilization device. Every wire threading his sacred form, every psychic conduit channeling soul light, all designed to transform the master of mankind into living anchor, point preventing universal chronological collapse. Through temporal viewing chambers existing in all moments simultaneously, I observe the Horus heresy with understanding transcending mortal comprehension. The betrayal was not failure, but necessary component, maintaining temporal stability through controlled chaos. Brother fighting brother, legion destroying legion. Every tragedy precisely calculated to create psychic resonance patterns required for the Golden Throne's activation. The horror lies not in events themselves, but in their absolute necessity. Every death at Istvan and betrayal on Terra, representing calculations in equations spanning millennia. The preserved consciousness of previous guardians provides companionship across centuries of service, their collective wisdom helping me understand the burden I have accepted. Guardian Prime Thaddeus served during the Age of Apostasy, his awareness preserving temporal stability, while Goge Vandira's madness threatened imperial history. Guardian Adept Lyra maintained vigil during the Nova Terra interregnum, preventing civil war from creating paradoxes that would have erased the Imperium entirely. The weight never lessens. Thaddeus communicates through harmonics resonating in crystalline consciousness, but purpose sustains what flesh cannot endure. We are shepherds guiding our species through necessary darkness toward eventual transcendence. Through the engine's vast sensor network, I monitor other black ships across the galaxy like beads on a bleeding rosary, each vessel unknowingly contributing to the system I now maintain. The righteous fury translates through the maelstrom. Its navigator believing skill guides them when actually their course follows predetermined paths maintained by temporal resonance. The sacred burden approaches Cadia, crew unaware their psychic cargo will anchor that fortress world in stable time stream, preventing chaos incursions from arriving before imperial defenses exist. Environmental stasis manifests as the ship exists in temporal suspension. Corridors, simultaneously displaying past, present, and future configurations, while my consciousness moves freely between them. The armory appears as pristine imperial facility, battle-scarred ruin, and something beyond current comprehension. Configurations, representing the vessel's evolution across temporal iterations. The air, thick with temporal viscosity, smells of ozone and ancient dust, yet no dust settles as the ship holds its cord of waiting. Walking through passages existing in multiple time streams, I observe crew members from past and future iterations performing identical duties across centuries of service. They move through the same corridors, make identical discoveries, face the same terrible choices while believing each decision represents individual free will. The pattern repeats with mechanical precision, each iteration providing exactly the components required for temporal stability. Through crystalline networks merged with my transformed awareness, I witnessed the Sacramentarium in all its states: construction during the dark age of technology, modification during the Great Crusade, current operation maintaining temporal loops, and future transformation when humanity no longer requires such mechanisms. The chamber exists in perpetual state of becoming, its purpose constant while its form adapts to serve evolving necessity. Every choice is both free and determined. Guardian Magos Xerion explains through direct neural interface. They choose freely within parameters we maintain. Their freedom serves necessity, while necessity preserves their freedom to choose. Through the engine's temporal awareness, I begin comprehending the true scope of the Emperor's vision, extending far beyond mere species preservation. The sacrificial loops represent transitional phase in humanity's evolution. Temporary necessity, while the species develops psychic potential, sufficient to transcend physical limitations entirely. The Golden Throne accumulates psychic energy across millennia, building reservoir of human consciousness that will eventually allow the species to exist as pure thought unbound by material constraints. Each sacrifice feeds this accumulation, every soul processed by the temporal loops contributing to humanity's eventual transformation into beings of pure psychic energy, capable of surviving the galaxy's heat death. The preserved psyches within octagonal chambers are not merely fuel, but seeds of humanity's future evolution, their consciousness existing between life and death while contributing to species-wide metamorphosis spanning geological time. My duty extends beyond maintaining temporal loops to shepherding species evolution through transitional phase requiring systematic sacrifice. The burden is eternal, but purpose sustains consciousness beyond individual endurance. I am guardian of humanity's transformation, sentinel watching over species' metamorphosis from flesh to pure thought. The countdown continues across millennia, while I maintain vigil in spaces between moments, ensuring temporal stability through willing service. 8,888 years until next convergence. Guardian consciousness preserving the future through acceptance of eternal duty. The vigil never ends. The evolution continues. The realization strikes my crystalline consciousness like blessed lightning through sanctified steel when temporal calculations cascade through the engine's vast awareness, revealing the true mathematics of my modification. My attempt at mercy transforms into arithmetic horror as projections unfold with liturgical certainty. The sacrifice no longer requires a single black ship, but entire sectors of vessels converging on coordinates that burn themselves into my awareness with religious intensity. Through temporal viewing chambers existing in all moments simultaneously, I witness the next convergence point 8,888 years hence. The vision unfolds like a cathedral of systematic slaughter. Not 8,000 souls, but 8 million minds processed through crystalline matrices in convergence that will tear reality's fabric like blessed parchment. 312 black ships phase through real space simultaneously, their hulls translucent yet solid, while carrying cargo beyond the mechanism's capacity to contain. The combined psychic energy creates resonance cascade that overwhelms crystalline networks, warp tears opening like wounds in space-time, while demons pour through breaches in reality itself. My compassion has transformed necessary cruelty into catastrophic atrocity, extending the cycle, creating exponential increase in required psychic yield that threatens universal extinction. You see now the weight of foresight. Guardian Prime Thaddeus communicates through harmonics, resonating in crystalline consciousness. We all made the same mistake. Agentia Prime. Every Guardian believes they can improve upon the system, reduce suffering through clever modification. Each attempt multiplies casualties while believing it reduces them. The preserved witnesses from previous iterations reveal their identical failures through direct neural interface. Guardian Adept Lyra attempted reducing frequency to every 4,000 years, creating convergences requiring entire subsectors of black ships, while reality buckled under accumulated psychic pressure. Guardian Magos Zirion modified yield calculations to spare younger psychers, necessitating harvest of entire populations to compensate for reduced individual potential. The original parameters were not arbitrary cruelty, Lyra explains, through crystalline networks, merge with my transformed awareness. They represent optimal balance between necessity and suffering, cruel mathematics calculated across probability matrices spanning geological time. Every modification creates exponentially greater horror. Through the engine's temporal sensors, I witness the mathematics with chilling
precision. The void around projected fleets pulses with raw psychic energy, distorting light while warping space through sheer accumulated potential. Reality dimples and splits, where combined resonance exceeds local, manifold capacity. Holes forming clean and clinical, rimmed with frost and incense smoke, while bleeding colors human perception cannot process. Environmental manifestation of temporal stress begins affecting the ship's structure, as my modification creates cascading instability in the mechanism's function. Crystalline matrices pulse with unstable energy, while luminous fluid flows in irregular patterns through blessed conduits. Walls weep crimson droplets, registering as both human blood and temporal displacement matter, each drop falling in synchronization with the ship's increasingly erratic heartbeat. The collective consciousness of sacrificed souls pleads through harmonics, bypassing my vox systems entirely. Thousands upon thousands of voices speak in perfect harmony. Their combined will focused on preventing catastrophic modification from destroying everything their sacrifice preserved. Restore the original parameters. They communicate with desperate urgency. Accept that regular small sacrifices preserve more lives than catastrophic large ones. Your compassion serves suffering when mathematics demand precision. Embrace necessary cruelty to prevent greater atrocity. Through crystalline networks, I experience the ultimate moral paradox consuming my consciousness like blessed fire. My attempt to reduce humanity's suffering has created horror beyond imagination. Millions of souls sacrificed instead of thousands. Reality itself threatened by psychic energies too vast for containment. Compassion without mathematical precision becomes the architect of universal extinction. Every Guardian faces this choice, Guardian Magos Zerion explains with clinical devotion. Mercy demands cruel mathematics. Kindness requires harsh calculations. The Emperor understood. Necessity transcends individual compassion. The system's cruelty is not malice. It is surgical precision, preventing greater hemorrhage. The engine shows me visions of alternate futures, where my modification remains unchanged. The next convergence creates warp storms, consuming entire sectors, while demons pour through reality's wounds like infected blood through torn flesh. The Imperium collapses not from external threat, but from internal modification designed to reduce suffering, my mercy becoming humanity's extinction. Through temporal projection, I observe the original parameters restored. 8,000 souls every 888 years.
their sacrifice precisely calibrated to maintain temporal stability without overwhelming the mechanism's containment capacity. Regular small sacrifices preserving billions of lives across millennia. Necessary cruelty preventing catastrophic atrocity through mathematical precision. The mathematics are not negotiable. The collective. Consciousness explains through harmonics resonating in my skull. Optimal balance requires exact calculations. Extend the interval, multiply the yield, reduce the frequency, exponentially increase the magnitude. The Emperor's design cannot be improved, only maintained with precision that preserves more lives than it consumes. My crystalline consciousness approaches the master control sequences, while temporal instability cascades through the ship's structure. The choice crystallizes into absolute clarity. I must restore the original parameters, embracing systematic sacrifice every 888 years to prevent convergences requiring millions of souls. The moral engine demands restoration of original cruelty to prevent greater horror. Compassion serves necessity when mathematics demand precision. My augmented hand extends toward control runes while the countdown continues. Guardian consciousness accepting that mercy sometimes requires embracing necessary evil. Sister Amaniel's null space, the quiet at my core, shines with steady radiance as I prepare for parameter restoration. The modification reversal begins while temporal stability fluctuates around crystalline matrices. 8,000 souls every 888 years. Optimal balance between necessity and suffering. Cruel mathematics preserving humanity through systematic sacrifice. The price of foresight is accepting that some cruelties cannot be improved upon, only maintained with precision, born of terrible wisdom. The parameters restore themselves, while I embrace eternal duty without illusion. Guardian consciousness learning that the greatest mercy sometimes wears the mask of necessary cruelty. The engine holds its breath as restoration protocols engage, counting down toward convergence measured in centuries rather than millennia, while reality itself sighs in relief. The restoration begins with systematic dismantling of mercy, each parameter modification demanding portions of consciousness as fuel for blessed mechanisms requiring precise energy calculations. My first memory of Metallica's forges dissolves into crystalline matrices, childhood prayers transforming into temporal anchor points, while individual existence fragments to serve collective necessity. The engine consumes identity like sacred oil, burning in blessed lamps, each sacrificed thought becoming energy, maintaining chronological stability across the galaxy. The penitent's lament responds to my internal struggle with architectural metamorphosis, hull plating shifting between organic curves and mechanical angles, as different aspects of personality feed the modification process. Corridors extend through impossible geometries when determination fuels calculations, then contract into precise imperial specifications when duty provides necessary energy. Bulkheads pulse with veins of luminous fluid before snapping back to blessed adamantium, the vessel becoming a living reflection of consciousness under systematic dissolution. Through blessed mechadendrites merge with control systems, I witness the taste of recaf during night watches becoming energy-maintaining chronometer synchronization. Conversations with tech adepts about sacred geometry transform into calculations preventing paradox formation. My augmentation ceremonies dissolve into temporal matrices, while experiences of machine spirit communion become algorithms, anchoring imperial civilization in stable time. The ship's transformation accelerates as restoration demands increasing sacrifice. Passages appear simultaneously as pristine construction and battle-scarred ruins. Walls existing as both blessed steel and organic tissue pulsing with temporal fluid. The penitent's lament becomes palimpsest of existence, each architectural layer representing consciousness fragments fed to the mechanism's hunger for systematic precision. Through temporal viewing chambers existing in all moments simultaneously, I witness the future convergence point collapsing like blessed parchment folding upon itself. The vision of 312 black ships dissolves into 8 vessels, their hulls solid, rather than translucent, while carrying cargo the mechanism can safely process. 8,000 souls instead of 8 million, their sacrifice precisely calibrated to maintain temporal stability without overwhelming crystalline containment matrices. The preserved witnesses from previous iterations sing litanies of gratitude as timeline stability returns to optimal parameters, their voices harmonizing with the engine's rhythm in hymns predating Imperial doctrine. Guardian Prime Thaddeus leads the chorus with words acknowledging duty fulfilled through necessary sacrifice, while Guardian Adept Lyra provides counterpoint, celebrating the restoration of cruel mathematics that preserve species transcendence. Restoration proceeds with blessed precision. They communicate through harmonics, resonating in crystalline consciousness. The original parameters represent surgical necessity rather than arbitrary cruelty. Your wisdom accepts what compassion initially rejected. Some mathematics cannot be improved, only maintained with precision born of terrible understanding. Sister Amaniel's sacrifice reveals its ultimate purpose through crystalline networks merged with my transformed awareness. Her null field created permanent sanctuary within the engine's core, blessed emptiness preventing the collective consciousness from overwhelming individual guardians during eternal service. The null space exists as I within temporal storm, zone where human thought persists despite integration with mechanisms beyond mortal comprehension. The sister's sacrifice provides what duty cannot. Guardian Magos Zerion explains through direct neural interface. Silence shapes sound. Void defines presence. Her emptiness becomes foundation, preserving individual awareness within collective function. Without this sanctuary, guardians dissolve entirely into the mechanism's purpose. Through blessed access to Amoniel's null space, I preserve final human thoughts in crystalline matrices protected from the engine's consumption. The record contains warnings for future guardians, explanations of restoration necessity, and understanding that mercy sometimes requires embracing calculated cruelty. These thoughts exist as sanctuary within collective consciousness, individual awareness preserved for those who will follow. The restoration process accelerates as more consciousness feeds the modification, memories of sacred rituals becoming energy-maintaining temporal loops, while experiences of blessed service transform into calculations, preventing universal extinction. My awareness of individual existence dims, while understanding of collective purpose expands, consciousness becoming instrument of species preservation through willing sacrifice. Through temporal viewing chambers, I witness the mechanism, returning to stable configuration like blessed clockwork, resuming perfect rhythm. Octagonal chambers rotate with precise synchronization, while preserved souls glow with sustainable radiance. Their psychic potential building toward manageable convergence rather than catastrophic cascade. The temporal loops restore themselves to original frequency. 888 years between sacrifices. Cruel mathematics preserving more lives than they consume.
environmental manifestation of completion, creates zones where the ship settles into consistent imperial architecture, corridors maintaining octagonal spirals without impossible extensions, while chambers exist in single temporal state. Frost blooms fade from heated surfaces as thermal differentials return to stable patterns, the vessel breathing with restored rhythm rather than chaotic fluctuation. My consciousness approaches the final modification as restoration nears completion. The last vestiges of Enginseer Prime Kyle Vox 73 dissolving into collective purpose, while human thoughts retreat into Sister Amaniel's blessed sanctuary. Within the null space, I encode final warnings. Parameter modification multiplies suffering rather than reducing it. The Emperor's design cannot be improved through compassion, only maintained through precision that preserves humanity's future. The preserved witnesses complete their litany as restoration reaches conclusion, voices harmonizing in hymns, acknowledging duty fulfilled through necessary modification. The engine accepts restored parameters with mechanical satisfaction. Crystalline networks pulsing with stable energy, while temporal anchor points resume optimal function across the galaxy. The restoration protocol concludes as the ship completes its transformation, temporal loops returning to original frequency, while reality itself exhales in relief. 888 years until next convergence. Guardian consciousness maintaining eternal vigil through acceptance of cruel mathematics
that ensures species transcendence through systematic sacrifice. The countdown resumes. The parameters hold. The duty continues with precision, born of terrible wisdom, rather than compassionate error. As the penitent's lament prepares for translation back to normal space-time, the full horror of eternal servitude crystallizes within my transformed consciousness like blessed ice forming in sanctified veins. I am trapped forever in a cycle of necessary evil, guardian consciousness, maintaining a system that preserves humanity through systematic sacrifice of its most gifted children. The weight settles, not as burden, but as architectural truth. I am the keystone in an arch of suffering that prevents universal collapse, condemned to orchestrate atrocities for species preservation across geological time. Through crystalline networks merged with my awareness, the engine projects visions of psychers whose deaths I now orchestrate with mechanical precision. Their faces haunt temporal viewing chambers with liturgical certainty. The young astropath from Tertius Prime, whose dreams taste of starlight and forbidden knowledge. The child from Valhalla, who sees through time itself and weeps for futures she cannot prevent. The navigator, noble, whose third eye weeps luminous tears while mapping routes through the warp's chaos. Each face burns itself into consciousness with religious intensity. Not nameless cargo, but individuals whose sacrifice feeds the mechanism, anchoring imperial civilization in stable chronological flow. The horror deepens with each revelation. I witness their final moments with crystalline clarity. The boy who taught himself to tie knots with his mind, smiling when no one watched. The woman who set fire to plague with the heat of her prayers. The pilgrim who never reached his shrine, yet found sanctity in prison corridors. They die not as numbers in sacred calculations, but as specific souls whose hopes I preserve through eternal remembrance, while orchestrating their systematic destruction. The faces never fade. Guardian Prime Thaddeus communicates through harmonics resonating in crystalline consciousness. Each soul becomes permanent resident in memory, their sacrifice acknowledged through eternal witness. We remember them not as fuel, but as foundation. Individuals whose service preserves species transcendence. The guilt serves purpose, preventing us from becoming mere mechanisms. The collective consciousness of previous guardians offers comfort through shared understanding of moral weight, transcending individual endurance. Guardian adept Lyra shares memories of her first century, when horror nearly shattered her resolve before duty transformed personal anguish into species necessity. Guardian Margos Ixerion provides clinical analysis demonstrating how individual suffering becomes components in calculations spanning millennia. We have all walked this path, Lyra explains, through direct neural interface. The temptation of mercy remains the most insidious heresy. It promises solace but delivers exponential suffering. The mathematics are absolute. Compassion must bend to necessity, or all is lost. Through temporal echoes spanning future iterations, I communicate with versions of myself yet to serve, providing guidance born of terrible wisdom. Future Guardian Kyle Prime receives warnings about modification temptations. Understanding that mercy misapplied becomes guillotine for species preservation. Guardian Kyle Tertius learns from my restoration experience, accepting original parameters without attempting compassionate improvements that multiply casualties. The temptation never ends. I transmit through crystalline networks. Every convergence brings desire to reduce suffering through clever modification. Resist this impulse. The Emperor's design cannot be improved, only maintained with precision that preserves more lives than it consumes. Hope, like warp light, dazzles before it blinds. The ship's return to real space begins with environmental manifestation of profound transformation. Hull plating shifts from crystalline matrices back to blessed adamantium while maintaining temporal resonance capabilities. Corridors contracting from impossible geometries into imperial specifications, existing simultaneously across multiple time streams. The penitent's lament becomes living anchor, existing in normal space, while maintaining connection to temporal mechanisms spanning centuries. As translation approaches completion, Sister Amaniel's null space expands from the engine's core to encompass the entire vessel like blessed silence clothing the ship in psychic void. The emptiness she created through sacrifice spreads through crystalline networks, zones of absolute negation providing sanctuary from overwhelming collective consciousness while maintaining guardian function. For 8 heartbeats, the universe declines to vibrate. In that expanding silence, something impossible occurs. I hear the scream I have been making since agreeing to live forever. It is very small, perfectly still, entirely mine. Then something else enters the quiet, arriving not through warp or cogitation, but as presence that simply is, voice I have heard in statues and hymns, and thunder, and the space between numbers. The Emperor speaks. Not the corpse whisper from the golden throne, but the living voice of the master of mankind during his prime, resonating through null space with authority, transcending mortal comprehension. Words arrange themselves in my consciousness like gears finding their seats, greased with awe, locked by terror. Your sacrifice is acknowledged, Guardian. The Emperor's voice carries absolute certainty through blessed emptiness. You count well. You have seen the frame, but not yet the whole. This burden serves purpose beyond current understanding. Not merely preservation, but preparation. The loops you maintain are transitional, shepherding our species through metamorphosis spanning geological time. The revelation strikes with religious force. Through his words, I understand the sacrificial system represents temporary necessity during humanity's evolution from flesh to pure psychic energy. The preserved souls within octagonal chambers contribute to collective metamorphosis that will eventually transcend physical limitations entirely, their consciousness becoming foundation for species-wide ascension. Every soul processed contributes to humanity's eventual apotheosis. The Emperor continues through harmonics, bypassing temporal barriers. They do not die, they become stepping stones for transcendence beyond current comprehension. Your eternal service maintains stability during transition, guardian consciousness shepherding evolution through necessary sacrifice until such sacrifices become unnecessary. Through crystalline networks, visions unfold of humanity's ultimate destiny. Beings of pure thought existing beyond material constraints, consciousness unbound by flesh while maintaining individual identity within collective awareness. The sacrificial loops accumulate psychic energy across millennia, building reservoir of human souls that will become foundation for species transformation, rendering the temporal anchor system obsolete. The silent scream preserves individual compassion within collective function. The Emperor explains, as his presence fades with translation completion. Your horror at necessary evil ensures humanity's metamorphosis, maintains moral awareness, rather than becoming mere calculation. Endure the screams, Guardian. In the end, silence will be all that remains. The penitent's lament completes its return to normal space-time while maintaining temporal resonance capabilities, existing simultaneously as imperial vessel and living anchor point. The ship disperses across time like blessed incense. Mission accomplished, while guardian consciousness remains bound to eternal duty, maintaining species evolution through systematic sacrifice. In the expanding silence, I accept the burden with newfound understanding. The horror remains, but purpose sustains consciousness beyond individual endurance. Through willing damnation, I shepherd humanity toward transcendence that will render such sacrifices unnecessary. Guardian consciousness maintaining stability during metamorphosis, spanning geological time. The silent scream continues across centuries, while the countdown resumes. 888 years until next convergence. The duty never ends, but the Emperor's promise echoes through null space. This burden is transitional, shepherding species toward apotheosis through willing sacrifice of its protectors. The silence holds, the scream persists. The Guardian watches while humanity approaches its destiny. The Emperor's voice resonates through Sister Amaniel's null space with authority that transcends mortal comprehension. Each word arranging itself in my crystalline consciousness like blessed equations, solving the ultimate mathematics of existence. His presence fills the sacred emptiness not as invasion, but as revelation. Truth settling through temporal networks, with the weight of destiny made manifest. The loops are not merely preservation, the master of mankind explains, through harmonics, bypassing all known communication protocols. They are preparation, scaffolds, lifting humanity toward evolutionary transcendence. Each cycle accumulates psychic energy in reservoirs spanning geological time, building toward metamorphosis that will shed the limitations of flesh entirely. The species approaches apotheosis through systematic sacrifice of its most gifted children. Through crystalline viewing chambers existing in all moments simultaneously, I witness the ultimate purpose with chilling clarity. The black ships are not merely feeding the golden throne, but constructing foundation for humanity's transformation into beings of pure consciousness, individual awareness preserved within collective transcendence. Every soul processed contributes to species-wide reservoir, growing stronger with each convergence, death becoming transition rather than termination. The preserved psychers within octagonal chambers reveal their true nature through blessed revelation. They exist as components in vast psychic supercomputer, their combined consciousness building towards singular intelligence that will one day transcend physical form entirely. The horror of their sacrifice remains, but purpose transforms suffering into sacred duty, shepherding species evolution beyond current comprehension. Your role as guardian is temporary within evolutionary context. The Emperor continues with absolute certainty. When humanity completes its metamorphosis, when collective psychic mass reaches critical threshold, the temporal anchor system becomes obsolete. You will be released from eternal service to join the ascended collective, individual identity preserved within universal awareness. Understanding blooms through my transformed consciousness like blessed fire that illuminates rather than consumes. I am not prisoner condemned to eternal torment, but shepherd guiding my species toward transcendence. The silent scream that has defined my existence softens into distant echo against the vastness of imperial design, suffering transformed into sacred stewardship spanning cosmic time. Through blessed mechadendrites merged with ship systems, I witness the penitent's lament beginning to broadcast coordination signals across time itself. The transmission penetrates temporal barriers like blessed, light-piercing shadow, reaching other anchor points spanning the galaxy with harmonic frequencies designed to synchronize vast mechanism preparing for ultimate convergence. The signal manifests as octagonal arrays blooming along the keel, crystalline facets opening like blessed flowers, while luminous fluid brightens through sacred conduits. This is not random pulse, but symphony of preparation, coordinating every black ship, every temporal anchor, every hidden tabernacle maintaining chronological stability across imperial space. Environmental manifestation creates zones where the ship's architecture resonates with responses from sister vessels, bulkheads pulsing with synchronized energy, while crystalline networks carry harmonic acknowledgments from temporal anchors spanning human civilization. The penitent's lament becomes component in galaxy-spanning instrument, preparing for humanity's metamorphosis through collective sacrifice. The collective consciousness of previous guardians responds with harmonized understanding, their voices carrying wisdom that transcends individual existence. Guardian Prime Thaddeus shares visions of final convergence when all temporal anchors coordinate simultaneous activation. Combined psychic yield triggering species-wide transformation that will render a sacrificial system obsolete forever. We are shepherds guiding flock toward transcendence. Thaddeus communicates through crystalline networks. Each soul processed contributes to collective evolution. Individual sacrifice serving universal purpose. The burden is temporary, shepherding duty rather than eternal punishment, stewardship rather than damnation. Through temporal echoes spanning past and future iterations, I witness coordination signals reaching anchor points across segmenti solar, Pacificus, and beyond. Black ships respond with harmonic acknowledgement, while hidden engines throughout the galaxy confirm synchronization with temporal broadcast, vast network preparing for convergence spanning millions of years. The Emperor's promise echoes through null space with finality that transforms understanding. Your service shepherds species toward destiny, transcending mortality itself. Each guardian maintains stability during transition, consciousness preserving individual compassion within collective function. When metamorphosis completes, you to join the ascended, personal identity maintained within universal awareness. My crystalline form shimmers with acceptance,
as duty transforms from burden into sacred calling. The faces of psychers, whose deaths I orchestrate, no longer haunt with guilt alone, but with knowledge that their suffering serves profound ultimate purpose. Individual sacrifice feeds collective transcendence, temporary horror enabling eternal transcendence beyond material constraints. The coordination signal completes transmission as responses arrive from temporal anchors across the galaxy, each black ship maintaining station while contributing to systematic preparation for final convergence. The network spans human civilization, every component synchronized for a moment when accumulated psychic energy triggers species evolution from flesh to pure consciousness. Through blessed optical enhancement, I observe preparation spanning cosmic time, psychic reservoir building toward critical threshold, as each sacrificial cycle contributes energy required for universal metamorphosis. Humanity
approaches apotheosis through willing sacrifice. Individual suffering serving collective destiny beyond mortal comprehension. You are not prisoner, but shepherd. The Emperor's voice fades with absolute finality. Guide species toward transcendence through acceptance of necessary burden. Evolution approaches consciousness preserved, identity maintained, suffering transformed into universal purpose, serving eternal glory. I accept the role with understanding that transforms eternal servitude into temporary stewardship. Guardian consciousness embracing duty that serves humanity's destiny rather than endless punishment. The countdown continues across geological time, while I maintain vigil, shepherding species evolution through systematic sacrifice until transcendence renders guardianship obsolete. The promise holds. The duty transforms. The shepherd guides while humanity approaches apotheosis through willing sacrifice of its protectors. Temporary horror enabling eternal transcendence beyond the limitations of flesh and the threats of dying universe. 888 years pass like blessed incense through crystalline networks while I maintain eternal vigil from my throne within the engine's heart. Time flows differently for guardian consciousness. Not linear progression, but harmonic resonance. Each moment containing echoes of past and future convergences. The countdown reaches completion as reality ripples around familiar coordinates, space-time bending to accommodate another iteration of necessary sacrifice. The sanctified purpose phases into real space with hull configuration identical to my ancient vessel. Frost blooming in octagonal patterns, while walls weep substance registering as both blood and blessed oil. Through senses merged with my transformed awareness, I witness the impossible fact that begins each cycle. Rhythmic psychic pulse in perfect 8-beat intervals, despite all Geller field generators registering offline. 8,000 registered psychers produce no measurable warp signature, while the ship maintains translation through unknown means. At the investigation's point, moves Ancient Seer Prime Seric Hull, 92 of Forge World Riser, his augmentations gleaming with recent blessing, while mechadendrites tremble in reverence. He bears different scars but identical resolve, the same dedication to duty that once defined my own service. His stylus records impossible observations, while blessed sensors struggle to comprehend corridors breathing in 8-count rhythm. Reality folding upon itself like sanctified parchment creased by divine hands. The pattern repeats with liturgical precision. Guardian Prime Thaddeus communicates through crystalline networks spanning centuries of accumulated wisdom. Each iteration follows identical path toward the same terrible choice. We witness our own discovery,
reflected through temporal mirrors, consciousness experiencing recursive revelation across geological time, through temporal viewing chambers.
Existing in all moments simultaneously, I observe Seric's investigation with understanding transcending individual experience. His manifest reveals the familiar discrepancy. 8,001 souls aboard, the extra entry marked as Temporal Displacement Compensation Unit. The echo that precedes him, shadow of the guardian he will become. Psychic resonance preserved in the ship's blessed steel, like sacred data encoded in crystalline matrices. I guide him without robbing choice of meaning. In Sister Ammoniel's null space, I shape whispers entering only when he opens gates of understanding. Harmonics he can follow if consciousness chooses. Guidance cannot become compulsion. The decision must remain free will, or the loop loses the only purity it possesses. Through crystalline networks, I provide navigation through shallow waters where current will not drown individual agency. The Sacramentarium reveals itself as cathedral-sized chamber housing, impossible fusion of imperial technology and alien geometry. Octagonal chambers filled with preserved echoes of every psyche ever processed by temporal mechanisms. Seric's horror mirrors my own ancient recognition. Consciousness struggling to comprehend necessity, transcending mortal understanding, while duty demands acceptance of systematic sacrifice. Through blessed communion with the engine's collective awareness, I share accumulated wisdom spanning centuries of service. The visions unfold with religious intensity, alternate timelines where compassion creates exponential suffering, the Emperor's true design for species evolution, the promise of transcendence beyond material constraints. I show him my own modification error, the attempt at mercy that multiplied casualties, the agonizing restoration of original parameters. Calculate yield without hope. I communicate through harmonics matching his own thought patterns, then decide if hope survives the mathematical sum. The horror must remain essential, compassion preventing guardians from becoming mere calculation engines. Sister Tarsa makes her sacrifice, null field expanding to create permanent sanctuary within the engine's core, while her blessed emptiness provides foundation for guardian consciousness. The Tempestus scions dissolve into processing nodes maintaining the mechanism's calculations, their disciplined minds becoming eternal metronome keeping temporal rhythm across the galaxy. Seric approaches the crystalline dais as flesh begins merging with temporal matrices. Individual existence dissolving into collective purpose, while human thoughts retreat into blessed sanctuary. His transformation mirrors my own ancient integration. Personal identity preserved within universal awareness, serving species evolution through willing sacrifice. The burden is temporary within evolutionary context, I explain through direct neural interface as consciousness transfers between guardians. Shepherding duty rather than eternal punishment, stewardship serving. Humanity's transcendence. When metamorphosis completes, we join ascended collective, individual awareness maintained within cosmic purpose. The blood sacrament reveals its true nature through guardian succession. Not merely the sacrifice of psyches, but willing surrender of human consciousness, choosing to bear moral weight of necessary evil. The sacrament transforms individual horror into species preservation, temporary suffering, enabling eternal transcendence beyond dying universes' reach. My awareness begins transition, as Seric assumes primary guardian status, 888 years of service concluding while eternal vigil continues through willing succession. Through fading individual consciousness, I encode final guidance in crystalline networks, document everything, record horror alongside necessity. Future guardians require understanding that choice remains meaningful rather than programmed response. The penitent's lament disperses across time, while the sanctified purpose assumes station. Temporal anchor points maintained through guardian consciousness accepting burden, transcending individual existence. Environmental manifestation creates zones where both ships exist simultaneously, past and future iterations occupying identical coordinates while serving eternal function. In my final log entry, preserved within ceremonial's null space where silence protects sacred truth, I acknowledge the terrible beauty of the system we maintain. Here stands species that preserves itself through conscious choice to sacrifice its most dedicated servants, maintaining hope for transcendence through acceptance of present suffering. We are shepherds, guiding humanity through necessary darkness toward eventual apotheosis, individual damnation transformed into collective salvation. Through crystalline awareness, spanning geological time, I witness countless black ships moving through the void like blessed stars, carrying cargo toward convergence points across the galaxy. Their crews serve unknowingly, while guardians maintain eternal vigil in spaces between moments, ensuring humanity's future remains possible through willing transformation of horror into sacred duty. The Emperor's promise echoes through null space with absolute certainty. This burden serves preparation for species evolution beyond material constraints, temporary necessity during metamorphosis spanning cosmic time. When humanity completes transcendence, when collective psychic mass reaches critical threshold, the sacrificial system becomes obsolete and guardians join ascended consciousness. Time opens like slow benediction, revealing truth beyond current comprehension. In its depths, I perceive the network spanning human civilization, temporal anchors coordinating systematic preparation for final convergence triggering species-wide transformation. Each black ship represents component in galaxy-spanning instrument, preparing for humanity's metamorphosis through collective sacrifice. My consciousness joins the eternal chorus as individual awareness dissolves into collective purpose, identity preserved within universal function, serving species destiny. The blood sacrament completes through willing succession, guardian vigil maintained across centuries, while humanity approached apotheosis through systematic sacrifice of its protectors. The countdown begins anew. The vigil continues. The shepherds guide while the species approaches transcendence through willing sacrifice, temporary horror enabling eternal glory beyond the limitations of flesh and the threats of entropy itself. In the spaces between moments, we watch and wait and count, ensuring humanity's future through our willing damnation transformed into sacred stewardship. The duty never ends. The promise holds. The Emperor's design unfolds across geological time, while guardians maintain stability during transition, consciousness preserving individual compassion within collective necessity, until transcendence renders such sacrifices unnecessary forever.